I was raised on the south side of Chicago. To many, hearing that invokes fear, which lets me know right off the bat, you are not from the south side of Chicago. Because those of us that are Southsiders, we're proud to be Southsiders because it builds resiliency. When I was 8, my neighborhood began to change. Gun violence began climbing, and summers were the worst time of my life. For many kids at that age, summers invoke thoughts of ice cream trucks and running outside with your friends. But in my neighborhood, the summer just meant that you definitely had to be indoors by the time the streetlights came on, because that's when the streets were overrun with gangbangers. I would throw my comforter on the floor in the summer with a pillow and I would sleep there. At the age of 8, I was fully aware that my life would be short and was not infinite. The reason I slept on the floor was because there were instances where stray bullets were hitting folks while they were sleeping in bed. So it was safer from where my bedroom was located to sleep on the floor. Going into the world as a young African American man on the South Side, I did everything I could to avoid a violent death. I knew what colors not to wear with other colors, what starter jackets symbolized gang affiliation, and I knew what it meant when a car drove down the block and turned their lights off. I also knew, and for those of you that are from the South Side, I knew what get down Joe meant. And if you ever are anywhere in the world and you hear someone yell, "Get down, Joe," that means get down immediately. Don't ask any questions. Really bad stuff is about to happen. This is not America's normal, but the story I tell is very normal to Black folks in our inner cities across America. Black men, especially, spend the first half of our lives worried about violent deaths. Our own violent death are the violent death of those that we love. At the age of 25, I moved to suburbia. I had a corporate job, and the constant fear of a violent death was over for me. Or so I thought. In suburbia, I realized right away I was a suspect. I was pulled over frequently upon my arrival in Naperville, and every single time the officer came to the car, his hand was on his weapon. My fear began to shift from a violent gun violence death to, you guessed it, a violent gun violence death. The drive to work was a master class in being a law abiding citizen. Is my music low enough? Is anything obstructing my view? Is my muffler making too much noise? Am I driving too fast? Am I driving too slow? And for the love of God, am I signaling correctly? And then there's corporate America. I was the only Black person in my department and the youngest person in my department by a decade or so. I had to learn to smile when I was referred to as boy and to politely and somewhat passive aggressively remind whoever was referring to me as that it was not okay. When I pointed out how inappropriate this was, I would usually hear, "Oh, Ken, relax, it's because you're young, it's no big deal." When I informed my coworkers that I didn't eat meat, they were befuddled. "Come on, Ken, you do eat chicken, right? You gotta love chicken. Everybody loves chicken." Well, when another one of my coworkers informed the team that he was vegan, no one, no one brought up that he didn't eat chicken. It became very clear that because I was Black, the fact that I didn't eat chicken was weird and unusual and made me stand out a little bit differently. So even though I technically lived close, oh, ooh, when there were deliveries to some of our urban offices, I was always the go-to guy to pick up and drop off. Even though technically I lived closer to our home office than anyone else, I understood what all of this was. So daily, my seatbelt was a noose, and the tie I wore was a noose. I was in a different environment, but the fears were all the same. So when I turned 30 something, and yeah, I'm not going to say that. Not going to give you my age here in this story. So when I turned 30 something, I went for my annual checkup, and surprise, surprise, I had high blood pressure. I eat properly, I work out, I don't smoke. Still, I had high blood pressure. Black men die at an earlier age statistically than any other demographic in America, regardless of socioeconomic status. So for me, I spent the first years of my life avoiding a violent death and attempting to avoid something most people don't talk about, death by poverty. And now I've entered as a 30 something into the next part of the life of a black man, where I constantly have to worry about heart attack, high blood pressure, sodium. You see, being a black man in America means that from the day I was born to the day I die, I'm going to be aware of my mortality. The clock begins for me and most black men before we even can understand the simple joys of life in childhood. I want you to think about that. There are entire communities of 6 to 8 year olds that understand, rationalize, and prepare for their own death. This is America. But there is a bright side to this, and I'm going to share with you a Dr. King quote that's responsible for bringing to light. Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about the things that matter. There are platforms now, just like this night. There are books, there are workshops, there's activism to change the normal. You see, Dr. King not only recognized that Black American existence wasn't normal, but fought and vocalized for change so that the next generation will be better. I still work for the same company where I worked my way up the ladder and joined our management team. And as I talk to you today, I am one of the only assistant vice presidents in my company that's African American. That's actually an accomplishment. I'm no longer the only black person in any room I go into. And sadly, I'm no longer the youngest person in any room I go into, but that's another sad story for another storytelling event. But more importantly, I have a voice. What we see across America is the vocalized scream of not today, not anymore. We will not be silent. We will not wear nooses with smiles on our faces. And we will be our own advocates. My nephew is 5 years old, and he views the world with such wonder and such goodness. His future will not consist of fighting for his own existence. And more importantly, he's totally unaware of his own mortality. His future will not consist of fighting, and starting at the age of 8, he will not worry about his own death. I will make sure of it. Activists will make sure of it. Good, decent folks will make sure of it. Because black happiness matters. Black joy matters. And black boys and their futures matter. So thank you guys for allowing me to share a little bit of my life with you this evening.